If you have been asking if healing is real,
stick around and find out that healing is for real, and we don't mean maybe. My name is Tony.
and I am Zane, and we are two witnesses and representatives
Of the miraculous gospel of healing. All right, so I am Tony.
And I am Zane El Fuego.
And today we are talking about the hindrances to healing. I'm going to propose that there's only two hindrances to healing. All right, let's go with the first one. And that is the biggest hindrance to healing. Drum roll, please. The biggest hindrance to healing is whatever you personally believe is hindering your healing.
That is indeed a big hindrance, right?
That you make a list. You write it down. All right? If you believe generational curses are a hindrance to healing, then guess what? In your case, it is.
It is indeed.
This is something people don't understand. Personal beliefs, that's what you are holding yourself accountable for.
Yeah.
So if you believe that unforgiveness will block a healing, then very likely will in your case.
Mm-hmm.
If you believe a demon has the power to block, if you believe in demons to begin with, all right, be nice, Tony. If you believe a demon is more powerful than he who is in you and can give you a sickness or can choose whether to heal you or not, then guess what? The demon is probably real to you.
Yeah.
So therefore, there's your hindrance. People don't understand how we frame our beliefs is how we're going to live.
I think it is all rooted in, firstly, the perspective of God. Because it's unknown within the westernized Christian world that God's name is a character, a mindset, a principle, a function. It includes that. So they use the name of Jesus like this magic incantation in the name of Jesus and expect something to poof.
Abracadabra.
Abracadabra, wave the wand, right? And they use it like that, and then simultaneously, not knowing that the name means to be self-existent, they actually treat God external of themselves, which means they're now codependent, right? And because they're codependent, they believe, because then, just to begin with, your interaction with God is based on codependency, your entire universe is based on codependency. Whilst in truth and in fact, the understanding of the name now reveals to us today that you are in fact self-existent. And to be self-existent means that you are self-determining, which means that whatever you say is the hindrance, you have decided on your own, you are actually going to be subject to your own decision. So most of us in particular and have not been taught that you are self-determining, and therefore whatever you choose to be the hindrance will be your hindrance. And that is not a doctrine that you could start. That is your personal doctrine. You can't use that as a rule of thumb for everybody else. So you might one person may believe generational curses is the issue. The next person may believe, well, I sinned so much in my life. The next person may believe, I I I I don't have a good heart. Next person may believe is unforgiveness. Those are 4 different things. And it's true to those 4 different people. But because it is self-determined, none of them can tell on the other that is a hindrance for them. So it's what I'm saying is that you cannot make a doctrine out of that, because that's your personal thought, that's your personal belief. And because you are self-determining, God has given you the ability to do and to function as Him. Which means if you believe that this is the list here, that you need to meet the list, then guess what? You will not reproduce power and life until you meet your own list.
Yes.
And God's sitting down there just waiting for you to get over yourself.
So we had the blue collar explanation, we had the highbrow, the white collar explanation, which both mean the same thing.
It's the same thing. Same thing.
Here's one thing. In order to discover what the spiritual truth is, it has to be, in order for something to be spiritually true, it has to be applicable to everyone.
Across the board.
If it's not applicable to every single person, it's not the spiritual truth. Yeah. I was healed while I was in unforgiveness. So guess what? That's not a spiritual truth then.
Yeah.
If you know, and that's why I totally disagree with when people say, oh, Jesus heals differently for everyone. No.
Not at all.
That is not true. The outside circumstances may look different, but it operates the same for every living person, period.
That is so true. And just as we said in the last episode, and if you all haven't seen the last episode, we encourage you to go back to the last episode. But if you're saying that Jesus heals differently for everyone, what you're also doing is saying that Jesus is inconsistent. And he's not the same yesterday, today, and forever. One of the things that I would encourage everybody to consider on this particular note is, and I always use the law of gravity because everybody familiar with gravity. Would you say that gravity is working different for the vehicle, for the house, for the person walking on the road, and for the dog running across the lawn? No, it's the same gravity.
Can I play devil's advocate?
Go ahead.
If I have a parachute, I can defy the law of gravity for a moment.
No, you didn't defy it, you superseded it. What you found is another law. And when you tap into that law, you can supersede the law of gravity and you're floating longer.
Hey, I'm sorry, listeners. I tried. I'm trying to be on y'all's side. Okay? All right.
Yeah. But the gravity works the same way across the board. And so in the same way, you may see people having different experiences in different walks of life, have different struggles, and they get healed. It's the same principle at work.
Yes.
Do not be distracted by the 100 different things that you're seeing, but the same principle at work. It does the gravity works the same with the person who is falling down here. It also works for the same for the animal that's running outside. It's working the same for the plane traveling in the sky. But the train, just as we were just saying, the plane can travel in the sky because they understand the law of lift, the law of aerodynamics. And once they actually reach a particular velocity, then they can supersede the force. In the same way, the whole idea of healing works. It is actually a law. Bible refers to as the law of faith. And the law of faith is like the law of aerodynamics. It will supersede all of everything that you encounter in your life. All of your reasons, it has superseded it. Right? So you can see those principles work all around us, and we shouldn't actually find ourselves using all of these external reference points. And again, I think it comes back to the idea that the believers today have not been taught that God is in them instead looking at the man in the sky. And you're building an entire paradigm, an entire universe with all of these codependent factors, as though Jesus did not give you authority. The same Jesus that dwells in you, as he said, same one that said, all authority has been given to me in heaven and in earth.
Well,
Go ye therefore.
That's part of the problem with the sovereignty of God teaching is first you got to come, okay, what's God's will?
Well, that is a long process, right?
And that's the problem. That's the problem with the sovereignty of God that makes him, once again, it dilutes him down to a pagan god called Zeus, who's humanized with superpowers is all, and he's the mighty puppet master. God is not a puppet master, and in Zane's words, which I love, we are self-determining.
Yeah.
Who determines whether you're healed or not? I do.
Yes, sir.
You do.
You literally determine that all by yourself. I'll say something in particular that is going, for those of you who still struggle with the idea that you're subject to things. In the book of Proverbs, King Solomon says something, and I'm going to paraphrase it. And this is the Zane version to what King Solomon said, right? No, I don't remember the verse exactly right now, but this is my paraphrase. Basically, he was saying in the verse that a man suffers as long as he desires to suffer.
Ouch.
And I know when I say that, for those of you who are saying what the generational curse is, right now you're throwing out fits. Like, right? But unfortunately, it's a simple truth. And some of us, even though it may rub you wrong and make you feel like I'm being insensitive to your plight, you may learn not very long after, or even if you just give thought to what Holy Brother Tony and I are actually saying here, what we're really doing is showing you love. Because it would not be just unfair for us to know that the principle of self-existence is what the Spirit works with, and tell you that generational curse is your problem. And Holy Brother Tony just used the word sovereignty. And if you really look at it, you see God as sovereign, which is not necessarily wrong.
Right.
But what you're doing is seeing God sovereign outside of you.
Yes.
Instead of seeing God sovereign inside of you. And if you're seeing God sovereign inside of you, then you do even need to just consider self-existence. Just understand that Jesus in you is sovereign. Then everything else is subject to your control. And if it's subject to your control and you elevated the curse or the forgiveness, what you just did was make that your God. I know I'm rubbing that wrong, but it's necessary to rub that wrong. Because for many of us, for many people, you've made generational curses your God. And if you believe your great grandfather was the one that started the curse and everybody's suffering, then guess what? Your God is your great, 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 great grandfather. They believe your unforgiveness, then you believe that your God is your emotions. Your God is your perspective. Your God is the neighbor. Yeah, the man who prayed on him, he didn't have enough faith. You have plenty. You have a lot of gods, and not the God inside of you. So it's something that I encourage you to consider. I know it might get you upset, but that changed my life then, Holy Brother Tony. A man suffers as long as he desires to suffer.
Now, let's take that, but let's take it a little bit deeper now.
Right.
Most of us live in the past.
Mm-hmm.
We're on automated pilot. We're on automatic pilot instead of being present in each moment.
It's true.
Where your awareness is, that's where your energy goes.
That is true.
All these negative emotions, when we're in fight or flight mode, we're in the negative emotions. And what happens? We're living through the past emotion.
Yeah.
If our projected future looks the same as our present, then guess what? We're living in our past.
Yeah. Yeah. I actually call it, this is something in particular that I see with a lot of people who suffer trauma, some sort of trauma. It's very common. Instead of, and this is all unfortunately due to the psychology that exists in the world today, where everybody is being taught that they are a species,
Right.
male species, female species, and this is what happened to me, and I am fractured, and you're living in the world of self-pity. Unfortunately, the Bible, and we have taken this and actually put it to test, by the way. Most people who are actually stuck in what you just mentioned there, a lot of them are actually stuck in some traumatic experience. It could be a physical experience,
Right.
or some emotional experience. And what they are stuck in really is the feeling that they
Yes.
had. And what you are calling trauma is really a feeling of helplessness that you experience.
Yes.
An experience of invalidation and helplessness. And instead of actually questioning, which would mean that you have to be self-determining, and if you're self-determining, then you need to take personal responsibility.
Say that word again. That's
So-
a dirty word now.
Yeah, it's a serious thing.
Don't
yeah,
be cussing around here, Zane.
You gotta take personal responsibility, right? You know, people read Paul's word like God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power, love, and a sound mind. Sound mind means self-discipline. Self-discipline means personal responsibility. Right? If you take personal responsibility for your trauma and stop blaming grandma, granddad, your mother, your father, your sister, your cousin, the uncle, the friend, the next door neighbor, and the bird that was on the line across the road, right? Then you would come to the realization that there was a particular logic that resulted in the incident. And if you pay attention to the logic, whether it was your logic or somebody else's logic that contributed to it, you could identify it and just understand why it took place, understand what is the opposite of that logic, so that you never see the light of that day again. Instead, what you have been programmed to do is to focus on the feeling of helplessness, and you're living with that as a feeling, and you have made that feeling your God. The funny thing about your God is that you can never beat your God. Whatever you make your God, you have established as more powerful than you, and you serve it. And how do you serve it? You are in consistent awareness of it. So you are living at age 50, but your spirit still living in 1960. Your mind is still living in the moment. And here's a thought to just bring everything in this into its culmination. Paul taught Christ in you the hope of glory. But when Paul was speaking to King Agrippa, Paul said that Jesus told him that he will appear unto him. If Jesus is self-existent, we know that is not an external apparition. That is Jesus appearing in him. Which means Paul paralleled Christ in you with Christ appearing in you. Think about what I'm just saying there. This is a law of consciousness. Whatever you are aware of, you have caused it to appear in you.
Yes.
And therefore, you have taken the past and you are caused it to appear in your present. And you are living in 2023 and you're still living in 1995.
And then you have your predictable future, which is more of your past.
More of your past, because you're using the past to the, that's an interesting statement in the Holy Brother. Because do you know that in the actual scriptures, for the lens of the authors, there is no concept of the future. They actually they use, like, for example, to know what God will do, they use God's history to determine what he will do, so that they know the future indirectly from understanding God's history. Therefore, it is a powerful thing to actually look at your past, because if you're using a past that is based on that, then what you've just done is you're using that and you are creating your pathway forward.
Yes.
The same thing that you experienced, you've just used it as the gauge to say what your life is going to be.
And you're doing that. If you can predict what tomorrow is, most people can. They will tell you, I'll get up at 6 o'clock.
Yeah.
I will get my coffee at 6:01 in 30 seconds.
Right.
I will let the dog outside at 6:03. Most people can tell you every single moment because it's on automatic pilot.
Yeah.
I will talk to this person, that person, etc., etc. The supernatural is in the unknown, not in the known.
True. Exactly.
So I bring up the emotions because you don't have to undergo and relive circumstances that will keep you in the past.
Yeah.
What you do is, one, your emotions are not based upon circumstances. You don't base your emotions off of circumstances anymore.
Yeah.
You create, in order to create something, think about it this way. You have to have an open slot, right?
Yeah.
If you already have a predictable future, there is no open slot for your created future.
Mm-hmm.
So first, you have to open up the slot, right?
Yeah.
So there's room for you to create the future you want. And how do you do that? Through the higher frequency emotions.
Those emotions.
That are focused upon gratitude, love, the higher frequency. Those are the positive emotions. You replace the negative with the positive. You don't sit there and relive the negative. That's the problem.
It's not meant for you to relive it.
No.
It's not meant for you to relive it. It's meant for you to actually learn from it.
That is where I'm going to get in trouble for this one. That's why psychology and keeps people insane.
Yeah. Because they relive in the moment over and over and over and over and over
And
instead of
the
identifying
same
the logic.
addiction still exists, and the addictions are all the chemicals that are released through these lower frequencies emotions. You're addicted to being depressed.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what keeps you there.
Yeah.
Now, awareness, your energy is where you focus. So now you become aware of that, and now you change that.
Create a routine. You need to
Then,
create a new
poof,
routine.
you are healed.
Yeah. And that goes for both mental healing, mental health, and physical healing.
Oh,
It
God's
goes for
kingdom, as we've been talking about, it's the same thing.
yeah. Yeah.
Every, everything operates the same way. Gravity operates the same way for everybody.
Exactly. And here's one thing in particular, and then we wrap up this episode. But I think, Holy Brother, we need to continue on a few episodes on this right here. For those of you in particular who struggle to understand, why is this a problem? Look at a simple scenario. Have you ever had an experience with someone that caused you to feel heat towards them? What are the simple scenario? When somebody hates somebody, they usually have one of two responses to the emotion that they're experiencing of hate. That hate means that there is some resentment present. And they either go one or two directions. Either they hold on, either they go in the direction of becoming aware, becoming like the person, or they choose the option of trying to be the opposite of that person. Whether they go in the left or the right, they still become the person. They might adjust the behaviors for the one who doesn't want to be like that person. So they start to adjust the behaviors, but they will always become the same person. It doesn't matter which direction you go. And the one thing that is rooting them in becoming that person, whether they emulate them completely or they adjust certain behaviors in their mind to cause them to think that they're different, what is rooting them there is that whether they go left or right, they are daily in awareness of the person. And what you are aware of consistently, you become. What you are aware of in consistency shapes your identity. If you are aware of the president on a daily basis, you're going to start to walk like him. You're going to start to speak like him. The way, your mannerisms of expression is going to resemble him. If you're aware of Holy Brother Tony, you're going to sound just like him. In a daily awareness, you're going to start to use his verbiage. You'll speak with the same mannerism. You will lift your hand like him. Because what you are aware of is meant to give you orientation. As Holy Brother Tony says, is the power of awareness. So if you're aware of the trauma, what do you think that you're doing? You're not trying to get out of it. And the psychologist and the psychiatrist, not that we are clinical professionals, just let you know. But if you're going through it on a daily basis, every time you meet them and you're going through it like a routine, what you're doing is actually concreting the awareness. You are never going to get out of it. You are going to depend on them for the rest of your life. Because what they've done is actually put you or sink you in the hole, to live in the hole. And they are there on a regular basis saying, this is my hand to come out of the hole. But you're not going to come out of the hole. you're really digging the hole deeper. So if it works like that for Christ, who says he's appearing in you, you want to be very careful about what you're using as your awareness. And as Holy Brother Tony put it, all these emotions, there's something in particular, and this is the first time I'm going to frame it like this on this particular podcast. I do this in actual teachings. Man is called heaven and earth in the Garden of Eden. Most people don't know that. Your spirit or the mind is heaven and the body is earth. What connects the reality of what is in the spirit or the mind into the physicality is emotion, the senses. That's the connector. So if you are actually using trauma as your reference point, you are experiencing it, and guess what you're doing? You are actually channeling that into your present. And you're struggling and you're asking, why am I struggling? Why is God not delivering me? No, you need to deliver yourself by stop using a reference point and expressing it into the physical reality, and choose the reference point that was put into you. As Holy Brother Tony was just saying, I'm just saying exactly what he's saying in a different way. Choose the reference point of your awareness, because every emotion that you have regarding your reference point, you've just released more of that energy into your present. And then your future starts to look grim, because your past looking grim. So food for thought.
Bam.
And boom. All right, so this is the Gospel of Healing podcast. We are going to continue this on the upcoming episode. And if this has actually helped you, make sure and leave a comment. Find us on Spotify, Google Podcasts, all on the main platforms. And find us on Facebook at the Gospel of Healing podcast. Right.